If you have purchased the PA 53301 AOD street strip valve body, this valve body fits all the AOD transmissions from 1980, literally up to 1994, 1995 in the Mustangs. After that, they went to the AODE and 4R70W. But this is the non-electronic AOD transmission. Now we're going to show you a few pointers on getting this valve body out and in and done properly, so it'll work great when you're all done. Obviously, you'll take the pan off first. We've done that already. Next thing is the filter. The filter is retained by 3 bolts. Now if you're going to reuse the filter, it is very important that you keep track of this square gasket. This square gasket will fit in this area here. You can grease it onto the filter, either the new filter or the old filter, and make sure it's on there when you go to put everything back in. If not, it can cause some very strange and actually hurt the transmission if it's not there. So we'll put that aside. Next, we're going to take the valve body off. Now the valve body has 2 different length bolts. You have some long bolts here on the outside, and you have some short bolts. The short bolts run here on the very outside, these 4 here, these 3 back here. There's also one other short bolt here in the middle. These 4, 3, these 8 bolts are all the same length. All the heads of the bolts are 5/16 or 8 millimeter, whatever you choose. Now we'll take all those off now, and then we're also going to change the linkage when we have the valve body out. So if you're not changing the linkage in this particular application, just skip that part and go on to when we put the valve body back in. But we're going to show how the linkage is changed in case you bought our linkage kit too. Okay, Matt, you can take the valve body out.
All right.
Now, to install the PA 53301, the valve body comes assembled, it's already been tested, and the valve body gasket comes on it also. Make sure it hasn't slipped during shipping, and we'll flip it over. Now, 2 pieces of linkage have to be engaged in this valve body. The manual valve here into the linkage here. The other one is the throttle control, which is here into this lever. Place the valve body in an approximate position. And let's get the linkages lined up. Now this one we'll have to push in with our finger and kind of finagle the linkage in at the same time. There we go. And we'll get that one down too. There, this is engaged, and our throttle pressure lever is engaged. Now, these valve bodies from the factory actually have 2 smaller holes, and those are used for alignment. The alignment holes, I believe, are this one and this one, as indicated in the instructions when you get them. And you can actually start those 2 first. Now, these on the outside are the short bolts, and you have 8 of these. The other short length bolts go along the outside, 1 here in the middle, and then these other 2 down here. Now the rest of the bolts are the longer length bolts. It's very important that all these get started. We'll get them all snug down in just a minute. And then the last one here for the linkage, we'll make sure again that this is engaged properly, and it is. And then the throttle pressure lever is engaged properly also. Now we're not done there yet. We'll come back to that in just a second. And we'll get this last one. This will give us our detent spring here. Now, as I showed you earlier in the linkage adjustment, in the linkage switching, is that we've got a spring here on the throttle pressure lever. You have to stick your finger up through here and bring that spring around, and the lever of the spring will rest on the valve body, and it's got actually a notch in there where the spring rests. And hopefully you can get a good picture of that, and that will also help in giving the feel for the throttle pedal and the throttle linkage. Tighten these all down. 10 foot-pounds is plenty. 8 to 10 on these. These are a little lighter. Always go from the inside out on a large valve body. Now, once these are all down, again, you go to put your filter on. Make sure the rubber O-ring is here, and make sure the square gasket is placed on the filter. Use some grease or something to hold it on here when you go to put it on. And then the 3 bolts will hold that on also. And that's it. Put the pan on, tighten those bolts properly, and then later in another section I'll show you how to check and change the throttle pressure if you need to do that. You really shouldn't have to. The valve bodies are checked when they leave, and if your cabling and your linkage is all working properly before you change the valve body, it will work fine afterwards. And that's about it. If you are installing the AOD trans brake valve body, the procedure is the same. When putting the valve body back in, make sure that the linkage is engaged properly into the valve body itself. Now, the throttle pressure lever that usually goes in here is not used in the brake. So you can either install it in its proper place and not hook it up outside, or you can take the linkage out altogether and not worry about it. The wiring for the brake, we do provide the connectors, and the connectors can be installed into the transmission pan, or if you would like to install them into the case, you certainly can. You can drill in this area of the case, in this side over here, and install the connectors if you would like them in the case. And that's about it. The bolt sequence is the same, the tightening sequence is the same, the torque spec is the same. Filter, again, O-ring here and the square gasket here is very important. That's about it.